Welcome to Journey Through the Gate, Paranormal Portal Podcast, as we delve into the many questions and wonders brought on by the supernatural experience. What's on the other side of the gate? Let's find out together. Hi, everybody. Welcome, gatekeepers. 5-5. I know there's a delay, so I never know what to do during this time. I ask if you guys can hear me. I just keep talking, but if you can't hear me, I look like a crazy person, which, surprise. Let's see. Hello, everybody. Hello. Can you hear me? 5-5. Okay, we're good. Laura Elizabeth, welcome in. Sammy Jane. So, Sammy, can I tell them? I'll tell after I say hi to everybody. Let me know if I can tell them, because Sammy and I, back and forth, we kind of, it's so much fun. When you're in the comments, and I don't know if you guys get instant notifications if you get a comment or whatever, but I do, because I go through the YouTube studio. So you guys might think I'm like nuts because I'm at work and all of a sudden I get, such and such commented on this video and I want to do it right then. I try to comment because I'll forget. Once you do that, you don't get notifications. You have to go back and find it. So I try to do it instantly. I can just imagine y'all's faces like, whoa, man, I can't. She answered me fast because I, constantly got my phone on, either doing stuff for the show or listening to podcasts or listening to whatever, even when I'm at work, because it's probably the only reason I have sanity. But anyhow, so welcome. Happy Sunday. I told you spring would get here. Are you guys getting spring? Let's see. I can tell him. Sammy says, yay. So hello to everybody. Jack, welcome. A Common Belief. I love you. D-Rock, welcome in. Vixen Doe. I saw Salvador in here, and Edna. Slow-mo, how you doing, baby? And so many others. I'm gonna always Vixen Doe. Hi, hon. Jack, did I say hi? Laura, it's wonderful to see you. Welcome in. How'd you like the intro? What'd you think? We're doing it up. Ian, hello, welcome, hon. And has anybody seen Susan Woodcarver Salvador? Did I say hi to you, sweetheart? So welcome in. Andrew. Hello. So yeah, how you guys been this week? It's another week gone by so fast. I'm talking fast because I'm excited. I have big news and I can't tell it. Don't you love it when people do that? But it's for you guys. Okay, great, Salvador. But it's for you guys. Okay, it's all right. I've decided I have to tease you. I've decided because I'm so excited about it and I can't hold it in. I can keep a secret now, but the thing is I think it's only fair to let you guys kind of in on it and try to, I don't, not so much guess what it is, but just something's coming. Something's coming. So anyway, I burst in with, because you guys were going to absolutely love this. And I got to tell one other person, and right now I don't even want to tell you who that person is. I love it when Steve does this. Steve does this all the time. Says we got something big coming, and he does. And here it comes, and he'll boom, boom, boom. He'll unload a lot of like fireworks all at once, and and then they just keep coming, and you don't know from where, and they're all good and they're all wonderful, and you don't want to miss a thing, And so when he says it, he certainly isn't kidding. But this one I've been after for a while. This one, it was I have nothing but respect big respect for this person. This person is the foremost. He would probably kick me if I said expert, but at this point, I think he's got to probably yield to that. So now you know it's a he. But that's all I'm going to tell you for now. It's juicy. I mean, as far as sink your teeth into, um, what's the word? I don't want to give it away, but it's packed with multi-layered intrigue, mystery, horror, um, just so many levels. That's as far as I'm going to go. I'm not giving you any more. So I don't want you to guess, because at this point, I've got to be honest with you, because if I'm going to try to deceive you, I'm at least going to tell you first, because I love y'all. But if somebody in the chat gets it, I'm not even going to give you a micro expression. I'm not even going to, nope, I will not acknowledge it, because right now I have to hold, I'm just so excited, and it's locked in. Right, Sammy Jane? So, okay, Sammy Jane. So here's another thing, and I think you guys are so kind about Cabin 22 and going back and watching the playlist and sharing it with people. And I'm telling you, if you got camping coming, if you've got, you're going to be sitting around the fire pit, and you've got to wait. No, not spilling. No, you're not getting out of me, Salvador. Nope, nope, nope. Blah, 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 blah. What's that thing that kids used to do? So, nope, not doing it. You know, never understood that. I mean, you lock your lips and then you throw away the key. Well, what are you going to do? You know, somebody go after the key? Do you know where the key went? I've watched people do that, put it in their pocket, you know, but I've also seen them lock their lips and throw away the keys. Well, now you can't talk forever, right? Dumbass. So anyway, the silly things we do. That crap people believe in, and they don't believe in ghosts, or that Aunt Fanny can come back and show you where the apple pie recipe is, or you know, Uncle Willie can show you where the insurance papers are. People are crazy. So anyhow, in Cabin 22, so many people, thank you again to Steve, because he pointed it out, and so many people really enjoyed it. And if you guys knew how that was written, and I've said it many times on here, but again, I still think it was help with that from spirit. Somebody had a story to tell, and it had a narrative, and it definitely had an outcome. And you know, and it definitely had an agenda, without a doubt. Spiritual warfare, you know, because people, you know, whether you feel it or not, you in it. Just say it's not something wicked this way comes, honey, it's here, you know, and there's more coming. And here's the thing about it. Here's the thing about it. It's like it's like when you go to you know, any kind of historic land, right? And it sounds again silly to say it's all historic. You know, we know this, but it's like when you go and they say, "Where was the battle?" and you're standing in it. And people, you know, now say, "Oh, I don't believe I'm in spiritual warfare. That's just crazy. And the Bible thumping this, and I don't care what you want to call it, like dark versus light, you know, whatever. It's here." And it's really strange how people react to things. The things that they believe and accept immediately without question. But once you start telling him that, you know, people, like, it almost seems like they believe in the dark. You know, they don't want to believe it can really hurt them. They can mess around with it and stuff like that. Oh, it's just a game until it bites them, right? But those same, well, not those same people, but a group of people that are similar also have a hard time believing that the positive could happen, that the positive could be true. And that's very strange to me, don't you think? So anyway, that's what Cabin 22 is about. Thank you to Steve for pointing it out. So many new people have been listening to it that hadn't heard it before, and I was lucky enough to have them reach out in comment section and say wonderful, wonderful things. Um my partner and I listened to it. My wife loved it. My kids liked it. They were held on the edge of their seat here, and they touched this character's love. This character touched them. Um, all the just amazing comments, and I was lucky enough to kind of ride along with Sammy Jane, and I think you really enjoyed it, didn't you, sweetie? And I've been seeing this stuff go by, and I'm trying to read it at the same time, but so I miss a lot of the chat, and I'm sorry. But oh, Rage, oh gosh, he would make a great co-host, Vixen Doe. How you doing, sweetheart? So yeah, and Sammy Jane, it was wonderful to ride along with you. There you go. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And Sammy Jane, you don't know, when I was writing that book, I would write a couple pages, and I did it like a serial and released it that way. So the first people listening to it never got to hear it. They heard it unfold as I wrote it. And then I put it all together, and then I redid it with the video because I thought it was kind of cool, and released it for Halloween and yada, yada, yada. Anyway, the way it came out, a lot of those characters, I felt like almost were here because I don't remember writing a lot of it. And what I mean by that is, like, I will be listening to it and I'll go, man, did I write that? That's amazing. Where did that line come from? It's so outside of, my normal speak and cadence or things like that. But anyway, that's kind of an added bonus that I think some of that was spirit written, but I think the message was important, and I think it's important for now because I do believe we are in spiritual warfare. I don't think we ever left it. I think it's just amping up. The dial's getting turned up. Welcome, Paradox. The dial's getting turned up. Hey, Glenn. So I had a thing that goes along with that. Oh man, I hope I can find it. Where did I put that sucker? I'll find it along the way. But I thought it was really cool. I got a fortune, and I saved it, and that's what I'm looking for now. It's like kind of hold it up as proof, but it's here. When I stop looking for it, I'll find it. But a fortune out of a fortune cookie. And the way it said was, all the darkness in the universe cannot put out the light of a single candle. How's that for a fortune cookie? When you throw it out there, I believe in the universe. I believe it comes back, and I believe it's energy. And it's just like Lynn Monet has been on here and said, and Rob Guttrow via the animals and ghosts, of England and all around the world. He's traveled and everything else. They all seem to give the same message. So I believe it to be true. And somebody said they snuck their own snacks in here. That is, it's absolutely encouraged. You're supposed to bring as many snacks as you would like. Of course, pass them around the class, and I just can't tell you how good it is to see y'all. So this surprise coming up. I know I'm jumping all over the place, but if you listen, it'll make sense eventually. So woo woo. And welcome to Hot Mess Express. But I got to thinking, all these wonderful people coming on, and Dr. Mike talking about, we had a wonderful discussion about the levels of the rivers. And for those of you guys that weren't here that night, or part of it was in a conversation that he and I had, I had described it to him at Tennessee, Chattanooga. There's an aquarium, and as you're walking down the stairs and you're descending down into this aquarium display of the Tennessee River, you're going into like a wood line. You got trees and everything else around you. Then you're going down the stairs, and as you descend, the walls on both sides start changing, and you start seeing the layers of the river. You start seeing the current and how the current fights against itself. And there's distinctive layers of different things moving in different directions, but they're all rolling off of each other, touching, some of them merging for moments, and coming back in and finding its own path again, and just layers and layers of this undertow and current and plant life and animal life, and the fish and different things like the land to water animals into just water and never see land kind of thing. And if you're looking in that, and as you're standing at one certain depth, you can really get a good chunk of that and get the idea that that's must be what it looked like if you could see all the waves and the energy going through what we walk through every day, right? And I got to thinking about what Dr. Mike and Lynn Monet and I had a discussion. I got to thinking, he's describing what he's picking up in his investigation over his time as a parapsychologist, experimenting his way, understanding from his vantage point and running it through his tests and his theories. And he's coming up with souls moving together in groups, almost like schools of fish, right? Or flocks of birds. Interesting concept, because he's describing it that way, and Lynn is seeing it in her way, and I'm seeing it in my way. And it's really cool how all that came together, and very interesting to know, whether you guys ever thought about it that way too, because we always seem to look at a house as it has a ghost. And I've been saying for years, it has lots of them. You just don't know, because you've got the ones that are in the cellar that you're never going to know about because they're in the corner until some caring soul comes back to get them, or they move off with another, or I don't think they dissipate over time. I think energy changes, but I don't think they just off into nothing. A lot of people say that. I'm not one of those people that believe that. But anyway, what do I know? So anyhow, I thought it was interesting. Moving in groups. Are you picking up are you tracking me? So these souls are moving in groups. Why? Are they following a current? Are they following a certain energy, a certain frequency? Are they following that as a group, like a school of fish? Right? What the heck is water, Jack? That's great, Jack. Jack says, 2 young fish were swimming along when a wise old fish swam by and asked, "How's the water, boys?" And one of the younger fish asked the other, "What the heck is water?" Yeah. And that's a good point, because that goes with what I'm saying. So here's schools of fish moving naturally with whatever current or energy they're following. Okay, stick with me here. With whatever they're following, because they're obviously migrating, they're surviving, they're moving through, they're following their instincts, their intuition, other things possibly pulling them, uh, different things, sonar, radar, smell, other senses. You see what I mean? Current, uh, tides, multiple things, but all natural, yeah. And then you've got birds doing the same thing, similar, migrating, the magnetic pull, uh, the moon, the stars, the placement of the stars, intuition, hereditary. Are you picking up what I'm saying? So thank you so much for what? What did I do? Congratulations, what? SY, but I'll take either way. I'll take all the congratulations, Andrew, but I didn't do anything. What did I do? Post a link for what? Oh, for Lynn's, for what? Anyway, mods, can you help out with that? Because I'm having a hard time seeing this. The screen is so bright tonight. So just, love you, love you, love you. So anyway, the birds. Okay. So they move, and you've seen them move in groups. I had a lot of gifts there, part of those videos where the birds are moving in in groups, and they're, turn on a dime. You've seen them make beautiful patterns and move, and they're not moving with the wind. They're moving on the guidance of one bird. This is all natural rhythms of the earth. This is all natural. This stuff goes on whether we notice it or not. Has for years. Keep on doing it. This is, you know what I'm saying? The rhythm of the earth stuff. So why can't you put something natural like souls, earthbound souls that have not crossed over? You see what I mean, Aunt Etna? And they would also tend to flock together, for lack of a better term. And what are they moving with? Are they moving with a certain energy? We were also talking about, it's an interesting concept though, see? You've got fish in the ocean doing that, grouping together and following along and migrating, helping. Hey, Chris, welcome in. And helping each other out as schools of fish, separate groups of species of fish. You know what I'm saying? And then in the air, you've got birds doing it. And in the wild, you've got the animals doing. What are we doing? And when our souls pass, if they don't cross over and choose to stay, I think we all agree, into, own free will, and what state you passed in is going to all have something to do with that. Let's start from that platform. Hey, Kai, welcome in. So if we do that, and some souls would just naturally start migrating together, you think, and start moving in these groups, almost like schools of fish and or flocks of birds, or for that matter, groups of monkeys in trees. I mean, what I'm trying to get at here is it seems to be a natural rhythm to the earth and to the energy, that when we let go, what are the essence of us and our souls, whatever you want to call that, our life force, our energy changes. And I would say that falls back into that natural, rhythm of everything else, and what everything else is following it. I think only when we're here living, we struggle with it. Do you see what I mean? So think about that. I think it's an interesting concept, because I also like to add in this. Looking into, someone mentioned it in chat, and I had it again in a comment on another video in the YouTube. And please do that. And thank you so much, Sasha Bell. Welcome in, honey. So think about that, like I said, because we were also thinking about ley lines and crossing ley lines. Okay. So you get almost like a natural vortex of energy. We've all heard this, so keep that in consideration. However, something as small as the corner to a room, and why are we seeing so many things manifest in the corner of that room? And what I mean is, how many videos have you seen of a black mist or a mist forming out of a corner, usually a high corner from ceiling and like two other walls, like a that kind of corner of a box of the room room you're in, right? So something significant to that, along the lines of the concept of a mirror, the reflection, and especially the concept of a mirror facing a mirror over a small space in a room or a hallway, such as when I went to Gettysburg at the hotel at the Wyndham. You go down this one hallway, and there's these ginormous wall-sized mirrors, and they're not tiled mirrors that have the little breaks in them. These were solid mirrors in the big ornate gold, lame picture frames, fit for a king, if you know what I mean. So anyhow, they're not directly across from each other, but they're zigzag. And I was like, my gosh, it's almost worse. Because it was literally, you could feel the energy bounce. And it was quite the way it hit you. I mean, it was palpable to walk through, if you get me. So I thought those were all interesting concepts, and I want you to take that into consideration when we're talking about our subject tonight, which is grave mistakes. And also walkabouts. Now, ghostly walkabouts to me, and this is just me, this is my opinion, this is just my thing. Ghostly walkabouts are, it's multi-leveled, why I call them this. Walkabout to Aborigine and in the Australian culture, it's very similar to, oh yeah, Sammy Jane. We have wonderful stuff. We have crispy on pillows. We've got mugs. I've got the to go thermal cup. Love it. Love the lid. It's a great lid. All kinds of stuff. T-shirts. All kinds of mess. You'll love it. And Crispy's so cute. He's got such a wardrobe. He's an accessory hog. You'll have to forgive him, but he does look cute. So when something's that cute, we forgive their. He's got a little, starstruck. He's got aspirations. He does. So anyhow, I think it's all connected, because if you think about energy, and if birds, and I don't care if we're talking about locusts. I mean, all nature's got this. Am I right? It's a natural thing to flock together. So if you have plushies, plushies, plushies. I can't remember. This sounds familiar, but I can't remember. It seems like we would have a natural fall right into naturally grouping together. And tonight, I've got 3 different short story, like the little ghostly bites, that are similar in the fact that these are all ghosts in a group. Now, I believe in all 3 stories, there was either a mass grave or a huge or an old graveyard or old cemetery that was disturbed. And I don't think anybody that's ever seen Poltergeist, right, forgets when the dad pulls up in the old, I think he still had the station wagon at that point, and he pulls up and he finally realizes that his boss has been lying all this time, that they bought all this property and they swore that they moved the cemetery, and they didn't. They only moved the headstones, and then they started building on the development. Now, before you laugh at that and think, oh my gosh, it's horrid, of course, right out the gate. But I used to think nobody would ever do that. And it turns out it's done more often than not. And then you have what I was go back to what I started earlier about being on Gettysburg or Antietam or Shiloh or you name it. Any battlefield you want to name, how far back you want to go. What part of the earth can you honestly think you can throw a rock and it will land in any land across the globe where there hasn't been some kind of battle? And who's to say also, here's a little tidbit. Think about this. Why does that stop at humans? What about a massacre of a species? How does the earth, how does an earth and then nature absorb that? What does that do to the energy? You see what I'm saying? Animals dying, that's a death. That's an energy released into the. See what I mean? You can get really deep. But here's the thing. If all of these things are naturally grouping together, why wouldn't we? I think we have a natural instinct to group together, to group with people that are like-minded, where we feel comfortable, where for some of us that's a place called home. For others, the word home is terrifying. Right? Hang on. Bear with me. So where would we naturally be drawn if we passed and our energy chose to stay, for some reason was blocked temporarily, or for some reason held back, which is again, and there's probably another 5 or 6 scenarios you could throw in there. That's not the point. The point is, where does it go? Would it naturally be? That's interesting to me. Would it strengthen in different places and go into these vortexes, these mirrors facing mirrors, these, I mean, why not, right? I mean, I've heard wackier shit, right? And you have too. I'm sure of it. So you remember when the dad gets out in the rain and the house is like, the house is imploding. It's full tilt boogie. It's paranormal on steroids. Everything is crescendoed. I think even the land is moving up and down. There's bodies shooting out of the thing because they didn't move the bodies. They just moved the headstones. And the dead got pissed. And he jumps out of the car and he gets a hold of his boss and he said, you just moved the headstones. You left the bodies, didn't you? And everybody, all the living has been on it, disrespecting the graves, not knowing, but they're just the same. But I ask you again, can you throw a rock and hit land that hasn't absorbed blood over in its history? This land has been around wherever you're standing on this beautiful earth of ours. It's true. Wherever your feet are, pretty much. I mean, unless you're so rural, you're up in the Ozarks somewhere where, where the Cheyenne dog soldiers were hiding out in Last of the Dog Men. Remember that? That's a good movie. And nobody had been up there ever except them. That's how nobody knew about it. That's a great movie. Zip the Dog. If you like rage, you'll love Zip the Dog. But it's great. Good movie. I think it was Tom Berenger, Barbara Hershey. Wow. I can remember names tonight. That's unusual. So all this ties in with our 3 little stories tonight. But again, I'm going to mention Poltergeist because I think it was 1984 that came out. I could be wrong. If somebody wants to look it up and pop it up, Glenn, if you want to. What year did Poltergeist come out in the theaters? If you did see it, you remember that forever. And I know most of us had one of 2 popular reactions to that would be, oh, they would never do that. And if that was your reaction, then I'm sure yourself now looks back and goes, gosh, I was, I wished I had been right. But of course they do it all the time. I have a place right out here where they've widened the road so much that you're right up against headstones on both sides. Little old church I think it's like a little shop now, but it used to be a church. And just all these headstones from, before Civil War time. Some old stuff. And I mean, it's right. You could, when you drive the car by, you could reach out and smack a couple of headstones. It's horrid. I don't know how they allow it. I really don't. I think it's really disrespectful. But it's also disrespectful to me when I hear about them digging up, Native American sacred mounds. and finding bones and stuff like that. I've known people that have surrounded themselves, they would fight to just about the death for that. You're digging up your grandmother and somebody else's. But then again, on the same thing, I didn't like the whole Tutankhamun thing either. Wow, look what we found. This is amazing. Maybe take pictures, document everything, then seal that thing back up. It ain't none of your damn business. That's why most of them got killed. I don't care if it was, excuse me, I'm going to sneeze. I know it. Oh, man. Don't sneeze, don't sneeze. Okay. I'm good. So, to me, they said they were going to get cursed. They said bad things were going to happen. They did it anyway. Bad things happened, curse or no. Way more than coincidence level. And I just don't think it's right. It's like, how far back enough is enough? I could see by accident, but then taking it out and display, I don't know. I know there's a lot to be argued for that, but think about it. When is it okay? And where are you standing? Whether you're standing in cabin 22 on that hill, there was a battle. The battle was good versus evil. The battle now is good versus evil. The battle then was good versus evil. And I think it's very interesting that our conscience level is starting to reach the point and a frequency and vibrate on a frequency. And it sounds a little crazy, but I don't care what labels you want to put on it. I think we can recognize now and see these groupings for what they are. And it's just like energy is now starting to attract like energy at a different kind of scale. If you catch my drift, it's like dark or light and everything in between, and people picking a side, right or wrong. It's palpable. You can feel it, you can see it. And I think trying to understand about this grouping also helps us in the life we're living right now and the times we're dealing with now, because it seems to me that whether it's got this wild energy, whether these things are coming in through the corner and that's a vortex of some kind, coming out of a closet that seems to be a vortex of in so many stories. Why a doorway? I don't know. It goes way back. It doesn't matter if it's an old wooden door, a big creaky door, an iron door, a doorway in a cave. It has some kind of significance. It's a flow of energy. It's wild, isn't it? And I think it's very interesting how there seems to be so much disturbance when we disrespect these certain places, but I don't think it has to be just a graveyard, battles, just disrespecting the earth, whatever. I think that stirs it up too. But it does seem to have a high statistic of if you knock down a graveyard and you just move the headstones, there are cliffs not far from where I am where they just moved the headstones. I've seen it. And threw the headstones off the cliff. Moved some of the bodies. And just built the tennis courts. It's at a college not far from me. Headstones are still there. From a distance, it looks like rock up on the beach, where the lake and the high tide comes in, and it looks like water hitting the rocks. It's really pretty. You get up close and start seeing names and dates on them. You think they got any paranormal problems there? So that's an interesting thing. I want you to keep all that in consideration. I blabbed on here for 40 minutes and we had a 20-minute intro. I can't stop the intro. I enjoy the animals so much. I enjoy putting little messages that make you feel good. I enjoy honoring the artists and the creativity. I enjoy making you all feel good when you're watching it, or make you smile or make you laugh. And, just in closing, if you hadn't watched Cabin 22, please do, because believe it or not, in a different scale, in a different way, I think that's exactly what's happening right now. You're starting to find yourself around people that you feel a little bit more comfortable with, whether it's online or not. It's a connection, whether it's a handwritten letter or a handwritten text. I don't think the text has as much emotion of us in it, but it has our energy in it because it's crossing over electronics. Whereas we were putting our energy pen to paper in our handwriting and our wording and our cadence and the flow of hand and everything else. So it's shifted. It's shifted. I think that's why there's so many misunderstandings right now. We've more tech and everything else, the less we actually can communicate with each other, because so many things are misunderstood, And it's so quick and instant to get mad. But that taken into consideration, I do think that people are choosing and finding ways to keep their light shining. And all of those things in the intro is about it. And the stories you're going to hear tonight, think about why these people that had these experiences connected into that energy. Now, all these groups of ghosts that seem to come in, we had, I think, one last week, maybe the week before, where it almost seemed like they were moving in groups. In the movie Poltergeist, again, there's so many good things in that movie. But again, nobody would do that. Nobody would ever just move the headstones and build a place and then have all that greed and that building of energy and all the young kid energy running over the grounds and everything else. And in that case, in that movie, I would say it wasn't just the greed and the intent and the lies and the fact that they moved the headstones and left the bodies. It was the indifference of the whole thing. It was that unmitigated gall. But I don't think it could ever happen in real life, could it? I know it has. Like I said, I've seen it with my own eyes and heard so many. Yep. Oh, Sebastian, Cabin 22 on this channel right here. Go to my playlist and you'll have two choices. You can just listen to audio, or you can listen to the audio with a little video accompaniment. It's kind of cool because I don't give you too much detail. It just goes with what's happening, and I think it enhances it a little bit. So you choose. But they're both there. They're both complete. It's about 15 hours of audio theater. And I wrote the story. I did all the voices. I did all the characters. And I did all the videos and everything else. And it's there for you for free. And it's a great story. And it's basically a guy and his dog thinks he's getting a two-week vacation in a beautiful mountain cabin so he can fish and be left alone from his batshit crazy soon-to-be ex-wife. And he picks Halloween night to arrive on his vacation. And it's a pretty haunted mountain with a lot of secrets and a lot of danger headed its way. And what could go wrong? So I hope you enjoy it. I hope you listen. It's something in there for everybody. Everything's in there, from dogmen to Bigfoot, ghosts, murder, mystery, moonshine. Gosh, man, there's so much in there, right, guys? Anybody that's listened to it, it was something. Oh, thank you so much, Sammy. But I appreciate so many of the kind words and everything else. But the words I think that are going to go the best tonight, and I hope I can do this. I'm going to be mashing buttons. Where's Ted? Everybody hang on. We're going to see if I can make this turn on the track here. Because dun, 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 I can do it. I can do it. Dun, dun, dun. Do, 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 do. Oh, I think I can do it. The words in this movie, the way he says it, how much crap he's gone through to get to the point where the human character and the breakdown to build back up to become, to find that warrior. This dude's right now, he's finding his warrior, his shadow person. He's pulling it out. He's scared and not, questioning, and then he's amazed, and then he's, oh my God, and then he's like, what? And then his kid gets eaten by the TV, and he's going through the ceiling. Remember all this crap? Guys are eating steaks, and all of a sudden they think there's maggots on it, and fires in front of them, and their faces melting. I mean, this movie had everything. Now, of course, all that's hallucinate. They're manifesting you to see that, but the power and energy it takes to do it is freaking amazing. But there was more than one entity involved in this story. Believe it or not, many of the things that happen in this movie are highly plausible and probable. Pancakes and bacon. Hey, honey, how you doing? Welcome in. So the things in this movie, I can tell you from my point of view, looking over my 50 years, just like in Cabin 22, the secret of that is most of the stuff in there actually happened. Maybe in a different way, maybe to a good friend or a group of people I know, or a story I trust from somebody I trust. The craziest stuff in there happened. The craziest stuff in this movie absolutely can happen. I don't know if the house is going to get sucked into a sinkhole. I've seen it happen in Florida. You know what I mean? It's crazy to think about it, but how much energy, how much concentration of energy would it take to fire off the amazing amount of insane, paranormal, metaphysical, wackadoo stuff that happened in that movie? That's a lot of energy. It's a lot of dead in that cemetery that got disrespected, right? A lot of them that got disrespected in a way. I'm sure, 90% maybe? I don't know. Is that too high? Maybe 80%, right? Oh, Poltergeist. I think it's 1984, Sarah. Poltergeist. That famous movie. They're here. That one. The kid got the TV, sucked her up, and the guy there was so many different levels of why this place was haunted. It wasn't just the cemetery. It was bad enough, but within that cemetery, there was a cave. Thank you, 81. Fantastic. That's for a piece back. So anyhow, it wasn't just that. There was a religious group that came in, around the time of, the Oklahoma Trail and that kind of thing, and the Puritan movement, and the, covered wagons, and they peeled off and got their own cult. And this one guy thought it was Armageddon, and had them just like MK altered like crazy, and had them convinced that they had to do all this crazy stuff and sacrifice and pray all day and stay in this cave because it was going to be Armageddon, I think, and they all died. They starved to death or something like that. I'm close though. I'm close. So they are still moving together in a group in the storyline of this movie. Okay. They're moving together in a group because he won't let them go. He had power over them in life, and he has power over them in death. And the people that are with this evil dude, who's just grown in power because he's eaten all their fear and all this other stuff. This is the storyline to this. Is an amazing movie. So that's one part of this haunting. The other part of the haunting is the disrespected dead who were in this cemetery that this development was made on. People playing golf on these people. And this is like your great grandmas and stuff, great grandpas. And yeah, and back. Disrespectful as all get out. But again, like standing on the battlefield, like I said, in Gettysburg or Antietam or, wherever. Monmouth, the Battle of Monmouth, the Battle of, whatever, name your war. San Juan Hill, for Pete's sake, you know? Where can you place a foot that hasn't been soaked with blood at one period of time? One period in time. Or many. And then you've got the stuff that's sour soil, just like in Cabin 22. See, I got everything in that story. And again, I even though I was solo doing all of it, I cannot take full credit for it because I know I had spiritual help with that book. Spirit wanted that story told. Why? I think it's the times we're in. But we also kind of got to understand that a lot of times we're saying that these groups of people that are moving together as ghosts, like a couple stories we saw a couple weeks ago, where the girl kept having one guy showed up and came in the door and then bothered her one night. The next night it was two guys. The next night it was three. And then she put the bed up against the closet door and told them they couldn't come anymore, and it stopped. Remember that one? Why were they coming in as a group? Right away, people are jumping. Portal, 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 portal. She said it's possible these were doctors from the past coming in and looking at her like she was a patient. Okay? So I would say that's a different kind of, that's not even a residual haunting or a loop. That's, for some reason, they're moving and choosing what they see. I couldn't tell you. But the way they're moving, it's not that's not a portal. I don't believe that's a portal. But where there is these vortexes, wherever they may be, whether it's down in a well or the corner of a room or mirror facing a mirror or a closet, like we said, or a tunnel or one created. I've seen people with energy be able to create one, a funnel of light. You create when you invite in, especially people sitting around a board or in a circle and holding hands. There's something to all of this. It all has to do with energy. I don't have all the answers, but I can tell you across the globe, I don't care what culture it is, it's in every doggone thing. Why? Because it's natural. But in this movie, it wasn't just that poor group that was being held by that overbearing preacher that turned them into a cult that scared them so much that they didn't want to die that it killed them. And he held them in life and in death. And then you've got the dead. And then you've got everything that drew in and all of that energy. Okay. And you've got teenage girls and young kids in the house, which they're feeding off that energy. And you got a couple that got along great. They're kind of got a great attitude about things. But even they're starting to kind of change a little and go at each other. Because it's a stress, it's sleep deprivation, it's fear, it's the unknown, it's I give up, it's like what next, it's how can this go on, I'm losing my job, I have to stay, this is nuts, my kid got eaten by a TV, it's nuts. Now am I saying can somebody get eaten by a TV? I gotta be honest with you, at this point I don't know. I mean, I've heard stories from very sincere people of being carried through a wall, carried through a roof. Stories of people, parents, this is the creepiest ever, holding onto a kid's leg because it's getting sucked under the bed. Have you heard these? Or into a closet. What is it about under the bed, in the closet, in the corner of the room? That certain ripple in the energy, that groups of energy orbs, human souls would gather together and swim like a school of fish in the energy of the atmosphere around us. And every once in a while, I couldn't tell you how often, I'm just saying, for sake of speech here, one is distracted. You can almost imagine this happening by an energy it passes and connects in. We hear it all the time. Got an attachment. Attachment's not always, who wants it? I'm not saying it's a good or bad thing, but it's not always an evil thing. Let's put it that way, right? And for a short time, they're attracted to your energy. They recognize a vibration and they attach to you or your light. And then you've got the ones that are attracted because you're challenging it and calling it out and asking it to bang on tables. And it was like, all right, you want some answers to your question? I'll give you some answers to your question. Watch this, So, I mean, it's insane. I mean, to try to imagine all this. But this house, like I said, had so much, and again, teenagers in it. Imagine you've got a teenage. Imagine a teenage. I'm going to say a girl right now because usually they have the most erratic energy. Displayed. It's always the female, and there's no disputing that. And Edna backed me up on this. Is so true. That'd be the first one. If I walked in and it was a teenage boy and a teenage girl, the boy is sucking energy at that time of their life, just draining it out of the room. They're pulling toxins from the environment. That's why their feet stink. That's why there's so much. I'm telling you, it's just they're toxic. They're like the oysters and I don't mean any disrespect by this whatsoever, disclaimer, but they're like the oysters of that house at that time because they're just sucking energy. And then later they burst, and that's their time. But right then, when the girls, because I lived with a whole house full of teenagers, I'm telling you, the females are just spelling it like crazy, and it's just all over. Have you ever imagined a 13 to 16-year-old girl absolutely going bombastic in the middle of a kitchen, having a fit, screaming because she can't go out on a date, or she hates everybody in the house, and she's stamping her feet, and she's doing all this stuff, right? Screaming and yelling, the whole house is up in order. I mean, even at some point, even the wallpaper might be curling at this point because everybody's just, and there's the boy just walking through, gets a bowl, gets some cornflakes, gets milk, drinks out of the milk carton, maybe drinks out of the orange juice carton, puts it all back in the thing, walks by, goes into whatever game room or TV there is, sits down on the couch, is oblivious. He's a gray man in it. But he just sucked up all that energy. He's saving it for later. You know what I mean? It's funny. But that's what, yeah, they're oysters. They're just, they're just taking the toxins out of the environment. It comes out their feet into those stinky sneakers, But imagine the girls. Now something sad, but imagine that girl is no longer alive. That's her alive. That's her energy and the capability of that energy. That pent up rage, teenage girl energy, right? Which I would have thrown a bucket of cold water on, by the way. Just saying, from the kitchen sink. Now go change, pull yourself together, So anyhow, now imagine that's the energy of a girl that age with that energy. And she's passed, and she doesn't know how to communicate. And all of a sudden, it all builds up. How would that manifest itself in a kitchen? Cabinet doors, drawers, maybe silverware flying around, maybe chairs flying, maybe chairs stacked all up. How does the energy of an entire cemetery, even if you take out half right off the top for crossed right over, everything's chill. I don't know what's going on down there, but I got no interest in it. I'm doing other stuff. And then you got the ones that have crossed over and they're just coming back visiting because they keep hearing their name or they know something's wrong down here. Something doesn't feel right with something that used to be a different way. I would think you would be attached to your headstone. You would be attached to your family talking about your headstone being moved and, anguishing and, whatever it is they're doing around the dinner table or on the phone or over social media. Your name's being said. It's got your attention. You're clicking into the energy. It would be the same for the dead that never crossed, but not as good, because I don't think that would be as honed. Now imagine those people not understanding why they're all of a sudden irrelevant and being disrespected. Whether it's a Native American Indian mound or a sacred burial ground of any culture, isn't a sacred burial ground the same thing as a church cemetery? We're just calling it something different. A sacred burial ground to me would be, a young child or a family's pet cemetery in their backyard. And it wasn't too long ago, we used to bury our own dead in the backyard on our property. Not a word was said about it. Bodies buried all across the desert. Shallow graves dug with gold pan and pans and you know. So tell me where there isn't sacred burial ground on this earth we're standing on right now. So I think that's very interesting. This is our first story. It's about 8-10 minutes long. But before I play that, I want to hit you with this little trailer here. And if they shut it off, they shut it off. We'll just shut it down. It can't be. But it's fabulous, and it is from the movie Poltergeist, out in 1980, 82, Glenn, right? 82, 81. And it's the famous scene. You only move the headstones, you son of a bitch. Let me see if I can get it to go. Hang on. Here we go. Well, there you go. Now, let me ask you this. Again, we're probably sitting there. Oh, gosh, that couldn't happen. Really? Not whether they would do it or not, but let's move on to, can this kind of thing happen? Can an entire development be now cursed in some way with this activity that just moves through the entire neighborhood until it just hits this crescendo of paranormal? Energy. Yes. Yep. Including and up to, but not mutually exclusive of, houses doing that. Now, not being sucked into the ground. I've never heard of them being sucked into the ground. I have heard of them imploding for no reason. Of course, they blamed it on gas. I've seen them burnt down. We've all heard those. But actually doing what you saw there, as far as the windows banging, light coming out, things bursting, energy coming out of the windows, like almost like fire bombs. It seems like insanity, but it's pent up energy. Like, you've got a big 2-liter bottle of, Sprite or something, and you drop some Mentos in there. Energy's going somewhere. It's like a chemical reaction, but there's also energy reaction. What's lightning? What's thunder? So wild as it is, out in like Harvest, Alabama. I remember when a lot of farms were being sold off, and right there by that road that I've told you guys about, there was a road that I could feel like a massacre had happened there. It was like, and then I found out my kids called it the road with no heart. Can you believe that for like a 6-year-old? What a description that is. Because you could feel palpable energy, just a weight on your chest and hard to breathe. And there was times where I would drive through that my adrenaline pushed it away, of course, but I would get flashes of visual and pieces of what I would imagine stuff happened there. It was just, you almost like you would drive through it. And it was a 2 or 4 lane. So you got to go pretty fast. It was around country connection to a rural town. But wow. So right around there, a couple years later, I find out, like, a farm, whatever. So development goes up there. And I look back 5 years later and they're all for sale. I mean, they sold like hotcakes. And I'm like, I don't know. Do I think they're going to have problems in that, Sure enough. I think there was like 3 active families in those homes. And we're talking about a big development. little sections, little cul-de-sacs, how they do. They'll take a farm and whip it up into, over, like, it's almost like over a weekend. And you've already got one cul-de-sac built, and the next one goes up, and the next one, and before next thing you know, you got kids and bicycles and cars, and then it was like it's always been there. Everybody forgets it was a farm there for 200 years. Before that, it was a small village of Lenape or Delaware or Powhatan or some kind of. It just keeps going back. Before that, it was prehistoric. What it was it's insane to just think it was just, oh, look, it's a brand new house. So here's a little something I pulled up for you. If it works. Oh, wait a minute. If it works. I hit the wrong button. Well, we knew it was going to happen. This is a little place called. This is a gentleman who wrote this a couple years ago. Denver's haunted Chessman Park. And his name is Alejandro Rojas. And it's very well done. And it was done back here in 2019. And he talks about he's from Denver. And it was funny because he went away to college. He came back and he was hearing all these stories of all these scary stories from all those different neighborhoods around outside of Denver. Okay. And eventually he began to hear rumors that Chessman Park was formerly a graveyard and the bodies were not all removed. And he said that he certainly had to be an urban legend. Well, it turned out to be true. And he saw Poltergeist, that movie we just saw a clip from. And when he was a little boy, and he was around the same age as the kid in the movie, so it kind of impacted him. He's like, this can't be happening. He remembered what we just saw. And he said after further research, he found out that all the rumors were true. An entire Chessman Park, Congress Park, and Botanic Gardens, all in that area, was a massive graveyard. And furthermore, many of the bodies were not moved. And they've continued to have problems there, very similar to the movie to this day. People can't stay in the houses. People, banging on the doors open and closing, seeing full-bodied apparitions, people getting sick, people having problems of all kinds, paranormal and otherwise. And it's very much like when Mr. Bill Bean was here. He's been a guest on this show many a time, and he's told us about his own neighborhood. Same thing, except it was over Indian burial mounds and multiple other things. And when people found out about that, they turned it into a satanic ritual place and called in a lot of energy. And the entire neighborhood was haunted. And each house was hit in a different way. And Bill went over this for decades, going back and talking to neighbors and stuff in the place he used to live. And not only that, the developments, the homes and the developments were haunted, but fields behind it where the kids would play and stuff like that. And it would hit kids in different ways and different families. I mean, just destruction. Every time it touched something, this was, this was, if I remember correctly, Bill telling me, it was elementals mixed with things called in by these rituals and also things that had already been there because of battles and things that had happened there. So it was a combination, as well as the Native American burial ground being leveled to put up cheesy 1950s homes or 40s. Those what they call those 1940s houses after the war, and everybody came back. They built up houses so fast, shotgun houses. They threw them up so fast. It was but a lot of them still standing, been rebuilt on, whatever. So now I'm going to throw out this first story. See if I can hit the right one. And again, this is from the wonderful Canadian show, Ghostly Encounters. And little ghostly bites, and is wonderfully done. I have nothing but respect for it. You can see all of the seasons. I believe it have 5 seasons on YouTube. This one happens to be from season 3, episode 5, and very interesting how each one has their encounters with groups of ghosts. But again, I want you to kind of look at it in a different way, where it's not just a portal. Because I think we're getting so close to, every time, something comes out of the closet, it's a portal. Not necessarily. That ghost could be staying in there during the day when there's noise or whatever, or maybe a month, maybe 3 months, maybe whatever. And then decides to come out when it's quiet or nighttime, who knows what. But it's not necessarily every time a portal, right? I believe these ghosts are just traveling together in a group because they were together in a group when they lived. As well as in other cases, one of the stories, they found each other after death. And I hearken back to what I said in the beginning about these souls traveling in groups and then waiting for that spark of energy, like some of these people that went through here, each in their own different way, caught their attention. Very interesting stuff, I find. Isn't it interesting? And again, I think disrespecting a grave or disrespecting burial ground or sacred ground, it's all sacred ground. Again, it's the disrespect. And it's the constant connection to the disturbance, I think, as well, if that makes sense. All right, here we go. I love this ghost, man.
I'm a Brunswicker. I've lived most corners of the province, moving around with family. But my place of habitation, so to speak, as a child was on the lower Water Street, which basically exits Chatham. The house that we lived in, I got a sense from it that it was a fairly scary place. It was isolated among the other houses in the area. It had all the creaks and groans of a house that suggested the presence of something else.
Strange lights, eerie voices, phantoms lurking among the gravestones. There are a million ghost stories set in cemeteries. But what if graves are disturbed? Could that bring the dead back to life? And could their spirits make their way from the graveyard into the living room of an unsuspecting local resident? Hello, I'm Lawrence Chow. Today on Ghostly Encounters, we meet Dan and Susan. Both have lived close to grave sites steeped in Canadian history. Growing up on the Miramichi River, young Dan Pond knows all about Middle Island across the water from his house. It's just boring history to a small boy, until the terrifying night when boring history finds its way into his home.
The proximity of the house in Lower Chatham was just up the shoreline from Middle Island. Geographically, we were very close, and we were one of the few houses overlooking the island. Middle Island is basically, it's a 16-acre island, and ended up in the early part of the 1800s, used for a quarantine for the Irish immigrants. a year or two after the potato famine. In 1846, there was something like 10,000 immigrants landed in New Brunswick alone. Ships that were overcrowded with people that were sick in travel and became sick, and typhoid fever and cholera sprang up. The death toll would rise as the immigrant population increased. I had an experience, a ghost experience. It was something that I basically discovered 25 years later. I had a recall, and it was prompted by a radio program. I was traveling in my car. I tuned into the CBC radio program speaking about a collection of reports that people have had on ghosts. Something very profound came to light as I was listening to these facts unfolding. And it was at that moment that I actually had the recall. I became very, very frightened. I sat on the side of the road in my car for what must have been, I would think, about 20 minutes so that I could get over this feeling. And at that moment, it was a profound moment in my life where I relived, I saw exactly what I saw 25 years earlier. I saw the ghosts. As a child, I woke up, I would routinely crawl into bed with Mom and Dad, or say, you know, get them to take me to the washroom. So I'm standing in the doorway, you know, getting my eyes adjusted to the light, and I glance over to the right, which was where my parents' bedroom was. I experienced a veil of light, a long trail of light just flew by me down the hallway and ended up disappearing to the right into the front living room. And as I stood there, I saw a family of ghosts appear and look at me. I can say to you, I've never been more frightened in my life.
The good cookie.
I saw a little girl. I saw a mother figure, I saw a father figure, and I'm standing there in a state of shock looking at them. I can't do anything, I can't even speak. My mouth is wide open, and I'm trying to say Mommy, Daddy, or something. I'm trying to make a noise, but I can't. There is a sense of a lack of something in the air, something missing, something extra silent. I call it the dead silence. And as I'm standing there, they, in unison, came towards me in a jerky, almost hopping, stroboscopic type movement. You know, as being a little person, that they were scary. They were very erratic. They seemed to be very curious. Perhaps at that point, the curiosity looked like aggression to me. And I couldn't move my legs. I was frozen. The father figure came towards me very close and was very much open postured with hands that spread in a gesture that suggested he wanted to pick me up. I basically went into the state of shock so far that I don't recall anything after that approach. When I finally woke up in the morning, I somehow made myself back to my bed, crawled in my bed. My mother said, "What's wrong, Danny?" And I said, "Mommy, I saw a ghost." She says, "Oh, there's no such thing as ghosts." So for a long time, I never thought about it. I never thought about it. I think as a child in that house in its proximity to Middle Island and the experience that I had, I would not doubt that there was a transference of human spirituality. The literature that I read about this island, that they had people buried there. People died there, people buried there. the upper end of the island, the ice in the spring used to scrape the top of the island. There were actual human remains washing up and being unearthed from graves, unmarked graves of the Irish immigrants. I think there's a very strong link between disturbing a grave and what I experienced as a child in that house. I can say to you, I have never, ever been more frightened. And I got the shiver going on right again. I've never been more frightened in my life. To think about it again, I can still get a feeling of fright.
Dan was terrified. However, the ghosts in his story weren't threatening, just curious. Our expert, Dr. David Reed, suggests a spirit whose grave has been disturbed might not know what's going on. It might be confused and curious to find out where it is and what's around it. Of course, to a little boy alone in the dark, any ghost is a scary ghost. Middle Island marks the spot of a tragedy, the premature deaths of many unfortunate Irish immigrants. With their rich history, Canada's maritime provinces have many sites with stories of horrific events.
That was fun. Okay, so excuse me, you see what I mean? I mean, again, disrespect, indifference, so much of that. And it doesn't have to be where a battle was. These people were battling for their lives. So much stuff happened to them coming over. I mean, somebody said, Glenn here, excuse me, said it, or somebody in here said it, the conditions just getting over here, and the conditions that they left, believe in the letters and everything else. Yes, just get here. There's jobs, there's this, there's that. And then any group, every group, we were talking about that today. Every group hated every other group. Oh, it's the Slavics. They did it. Oh, it's the Irish. They stink up the tenement with the cabbage. Oh, it's the Italians with their garlic. It's the Russians with their noise. It's the, whoever with their music. It's nuts. Whatever the culture came in and brought in that was different than the culture that the other group was used to. That was it. And if it was a group that was in, say, a city like New York that received so many, if they were lucky enough to make it through the travel in any decade, whether it was the Pilgrims coming over or whether it was the Vikings used to come here and pull Olympics on some of the, and that happened, just like the English used to go over and battle the Scots and, and all the different, name it, across the globe, still going on. Probably always will, and isn't that sad? Until we can't do it anymore, I guess, right? But these poor people that got through, that's a battle. And then they get here and they get sick because, people aren't realizing that you're traveling and you're bringing, your immune system is going into a different area and you're not used to it. And it killed off so many. About made my people extinct. So many movies about it. And so many movies from a different vantage point, like Medicine Man, where, they went into, the rainforest to try to, I believe they were paid by a company to go there and see what was out in the rainforest because it was being eaten away so fast and being torn up, acres a day. And they wanted to see if there was any plants in there. And this guy found one. which is that one of the ones, it was loosely based on that wonderful herb we always talk about here on the show, because it's Mother Nature's kitchen only, and it only grew in the rainforest under certain conditions, and it could not be replicated in a lab. And that was to represent a lot of the herbal world. It cannot be, once it's processed and torn up and mixed with, and the further away you get from the natural, the more you're losing the potency. Common sense. Okay. So anyway, that's what that was about. But it was also, that movie was also about how this professor who was doing the study brought, even though it was a small crew of like probably a dozen, a couple big tents and some science, lab equipment and some photographer and some, nosy reporter, which, made the storyline, but still. Point was, they came in there and brought their germs and killed off like 40% of this guy's village, as they hadn't been around these people. And that's what happens. And a lot of these people died from that. And if they lived through that, they got to face, the horrible shit that, all the other groups are going to put them through, because now they're a low guy on the telephone pole, on the totem pole. You know what I mean? And whatever group was low man on the totem pole in that city is going to treat them even worse, because it makes them feel better about what they're going through. And that's what everybody does. It's that power thing. At least it's not me thing. That, it's like, you know what I'm talking about. You know what I mean? It's until it hits your front porch. It says it through history. It's like, they're only after the people wearing green shirts. Our shirts are red. Just keep your mouth shut. Stay out of it. It's not your problem. Everything else is the same. Just red shirts and green shirts. And you can't change them. You're stuck with it. The only difference. It'd still be a division. And if people were after the red shirts, the green shirts would say, at least it's not us. Thank God it's not us. It's terrible. So, of course, I believe these poor souls are going to gather together. Are they coming through a portal? I don't know. Are they stirred up because of, what happened with their gravesite, or were they there all along? Oh, who could say? But it's obviously you're going to have more energy stirred up around a situation like that. But it's my thought, too, that you already got energy there. You've already got something stirring up. You've already got souls that are attached to the land now, stuck in their box, their mental, self-imposed or otherwise. So many different levels of being an earthbound spirit. You see what I mean? Confusion. They, like the question here, do some go see the other go? Yes. And some don't. I've been on cases that the wife had died and crossed over and had been back to that house to cross that guy, her husband. And he wouldn't leave the house because he wasn't leaving without his wife. If that tells you how it works. That gives you any answers at all. And over time, with assistance, eventually they got together to where he could reach himself up, his frequency up to the frequency it needed to, where he could begin to see those things again and connect into that energy. He was just on a different level. Like so many people that come on here and say, it's different levels. You're vibrating on different, you know what I mean? So of course I think they would travel together. Do I think that they were, again, there are so many in unmarked graves, mass graves. I think that's a big thing. I can't tell you the amount of in every culture, in every color, in every era, in every place. Things where at the time it was chosen to bury people in mass graves, whether it be war, whether it be some horrific um, genocide going on, or whether it was a mass plague, or pardon me, a natural disaster of some sort, a hurricane, a flood, again, the wide spectrum. We are so fragile. So again, we can't always think about, oh, there was a war here, there was a battle. And that's why, no, so many emotional human things happen all over the place. And again, unless you move completely away from it, I believe there are many places on this earth that human beings have never been, or very few. We'll never know. But you can find those places. But they're getting fewer and far between, but they're still out there. Don't be fooled. This overpopulation shit is just absolute bullshit. And I tell you right now, I still agree with Jim Mars when he said the entire population can move into Texas. There's plenty. It's just where people want to be, and they are getting into the cities, and it's this and that, and that's what you see a lot of. But no, there's plenty of stuff out there. Now, would you want to live there? That's a different, that's a different question. But I've seen all kinds of different places that people live, whether it's in an old converted over bus, or two people living in a 5-bedroom, or shoot the works 20-bedroom mansion. I looked at one just the other day. A picture came up through my thing, and I'm like, who lives here? Who lives here? And it looks like an old homestead castle, where entire families and multiple generations lived in these huge castles, along with all their servants and all their help, and all their the people that worked for them, and the people that cared for the animals and the livestock and the grounds. And it was these castles, these kingdoms kind of, were all, it's like all encompassing working homesteads, along with big places for entertainment, if you believe history, right? So anyway, would naturally, would people that were in the same tragedy find each other after death and travel in groups and stuff like that, and have it not be a portal or something else? Absolutely, I believe that. But I also believe all the other stuff, it could be true too. And that's again why we can't go in once for an hour and we have this all figured out. That's Maggie May and her merry band of pirates or whatever. And they died on the ship on the way over here, and they're coming through the portal in the bathroom. Okay, maybe they are, maybe they aren't. Maybe it's one of these, maybe the house just happens to be in the middle of one of these currents of energy. And maybe these currents of energy kind of move like with a natural flow. So like the wind between buildings in a city, where that wind whips through and it's stronger there, and it gains momentum and it gains strength because it's forced between those two buildings. And you can see it. You can see it by the debris in the streets, catching bags and bags dancing in the air as it flips around the corner. I mean, it's an amazing thing, but it's a natural movement. It's wind. What are we riding when we're dead? Are we floating on those currents? Are we floating on those currents that are within that frequency? Interesting to think about. And we're obviously hanging out with people that are vibrating on that same vibration. Are we only seeing bits and pieces of that? The ones that choose to show themselves or connect into our energy or move in our vibration just for a moment because they recognize something we're going through as something that they went through? It doesn't have to be specific. I don't believe so, because I've heard many cases where it was just a child looking for her parents and a parent missing a child. That connection. It seems vaguely familiar. It's not exact. It's not a bride being jilted on her wedding day and she hung herself in the hallway and she's about to see this other person do the same thing and they recognize that energy. That also happens, but it doesn't have to mean that. Not in my experience, not up to this point. And I think that's an interesting concept to try to understand, especially if you're out there and investigating and you're throwing out any kind of evidence that's showing a bunch of bubble like things moving down a natural current of a hallway where wind would actually go, right, where any kind of current, air movement or whatever would go and move. But maybe it's not just dust riding that. Maybe you need to take another look at it and see if one pops out, moves a little bit, or changes. Or if you can get a zoom in, pay a little extra attention to it and zoom in and see if there's any substance to these. Are they rounded? Are they different? Is there a lot of dust blowing around in the hallway? Are you getting it everywhere else or just in a group moving? Think about it. Because I've seen that. I've seen people on live video and they're walking through these like ruins of, like, say, a castle or something like that, and granted it's very airy, but it's also kind of dense and damp. It's not a lot of real hot dusty wind movement, and everybody's telling them there are orbs following you, man, and he's dismissing it and just, no, that's dust, we're walking. And now they're all walking very cautiously. And there's where they're standing and where they're going down this hallway. They've made, I know, I get it. Wind follows the path. But these things are jutting in and out, zooming in, zooming up, bopping, kind of hovering around the people, moving out, backing up, going down, zipping in, coming back in. It's not dust. And everybody's telling them. And this guy is so set in this paranormal investigation group that I'm watching do this. And this wasn't on TV. This was a live, I'll tell you who. But it was on, the inner tubes. It's out there. So, and I'm telling him, and, and I'm like, I know the guy's name, and I'm telling, I said, honey, I know how you feel about her, but I really think you're throwing away a chance of some really good evidence here, and maybe a next level theory of it's possible that you're calling for things to come in and interact with you, and they are, and you're dismissing it because you're stuck in whatever theory or narrative you have within your own mind, and you're missing good evidence, and you're missing a good experience. Even more so, you're missing a good experience, and even more than that, you're missing a piece of this answers, if you want to call it that, a clue that, hey, man, maybe we do travel in little schools sometimes until we find our way. Maybe that's another sub existence. And of course, others might, they're going to be drawn to whatever they're drawn to, a familiar tree that was there, or, a home that they lived in, or a rock that they sat on and took their last breath and leaned against, or 10,000 other, again, theories, a shore that they, washed up on after a shipwreck, or a makeshift hospital where they all died in large groups like we just saw. And then and I just think it's a little more, not complicated, but not the right word. I think it's a little bit more interesting and deep than just saying everything's a porthole. A porthole. Everything's a porthole. Everything's a window on a ship, right? With the screens. Anyway, that's submarines. Never mind. Forget that. Never mind. So I just think we should jump to conclusions. If things are moving in groups and moving through bedrooms and things like that, and hallways, again, I think there's something to not just the ley lines and where they cross, which could create an energy vortex. It seems that even, like I said, corners of rooms are some kind of an energy vortex. And it's just so many things seem to manifest out of corners and walk in groups down hallways. And in the movie we saw the clip from, Poltergeist, one of my favorite scenes in any movie throughout my decades of watching these types of movies, is the scene where the group of orbs, that's how they first start to appear. There's a sparkle at the top of the staircase. And the university, the people from the parapsychology department in the university, they're still there and they have their cameras set up and everything else. And they catch this and it starts to sparkle and move and it's just glowing and it's growing. And it's just this slow, almost floating cloud of effervescent energy. And it's moving down this beautiful staircase in this way overdone house, in this development that they put on the cemetery and never moved the bodies in this movie. That's the one you saw get sucked into the earth. Okay. This is when it was still above ground and just getting started. And they get this on video. And as this cloud, this, I want to say the light was slightly pulsating in it. It wasn't sparkly. It was definitely glowy. And you could see little sparkles of extra light within it. And then there's orbs within that. And as it's coming down the stairs, you can start to see figures and faces, these profiles of these people. And it's all going on at the same time. Hey, Mallard Report, what you doing, sweetie? How you doing? Good to see you. So that's one of my favorite scenes in that movie. And there's a lot of them. You know, This House is Clean is also another one of mine. But it said so much. Because here they are all traveling, first showing up as a mist mixed with orbs. I've seen it. I've seen it on a smaller scale, but I've seen it with my own eyes. And I've tried to fight for, I don't know how many decades now. I wouldn't throw out orbs. I would learn a little bit more about them because I don't think that they're not the only thing that's getting thrown out. I think mist is and the color and how it comes at you and how it reacts. Because the mist, to me, is almost the beginning of the formation of the apparition. And if it chooses, for whatever reasons, by whatever law and rules that I don't know, and it chooses to form, that mist will start to collect, and that's where the form will be. And this is displayed in that scene as they're all coming down. And it's just a wonderful scene, and the music is just right, and they're all whispering, are you getting this? Oh my God, look at them all. They're all in there. Oh my God, they're so scared. They don't know where to go. And they're following the natural flow of somebody walking through that house and out the front door. And after that, you didn't see them anymore. So where did they go? Did they continue on down the street? Did they disperse off into who knows? Yeah, that's right, Slow. They absolutely are. And you know what else is? Not just the orbs. And I don't know why we call them something different. But I guess it's just because it's in the description. But the, what do they call the longer orbs? See, I forgot already. Though they've got a name for them. Not sky worms. What are they called? The longer orbs. It looked like a glowing cigar that's floating through, but they're seen a lot around with the Bigfoot too, and in and out wood lines and stuff. It's just, again, another form of energy and another way they're displaying it, you know. And different people have come in and said, an angel energy looks so much different than, like just an orb of human essence or human energy, and it looks different. It feels different for sure. But the fact that they're traveling in these groups, again, I think it's because like is attracted to like. They may or may not have hung out in life. It may have been just a collection, and then one, another one pops onto the group, and another one, and they might lose one, and one be distracted by something else or move on to whatever. It's very interesting. But again, I think we're missing a whole nother layer if we're not paying attention to those things. Somebody get a name on the rod. Yes, thank you, rod orbs. Thank you very much. So simple, and I couldn't get it. Thank you, Uncommon. So, yeah, so don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? And I think this guy had a great experience, and he also had the added part in there about, it was like he got zapped into a memory that had been repressed, out of shock, probably too much for him to handle. Your body shuts down, which can't handle it, gives it to you when it thinks you can, and it's usually a surprise, and it's usually exactly like this guy experienced. I've experienced it myself, and from little things to holy crap, how did I forget that? But undisputable, at least as far as I'm concerned, and way too much out there to say it doesn't happen. So there's that. So the next one is another good one. The last one's my favorite, but this one is very good as well. And it also pays a little honor to a horrible accident. Again, kind of highlighting the fact that it's not just battles, it's not just murders and things like that. There are these hard accidents, factory accidents, and countless across the board. My God, they're happening to this day. You'd think we'd have it down by now. From accidental things like if you ever heard of the radium girls, the girls that used to lick the brushes and put on the radiated paint on the watch faces so they glow in the dark, and then they found out that it was killing them because it was, from massive things like that to factory fires and sewing, companies where, they locked them in and couldn't get out and had no safeties, to things like the Titanic. I think all these things is that it does that expel of energy all of a sudden from multiple people. Of course, I think a lot of these ghosts would hang together. And I will go one deeper that kind of goes with the question that you guys asked. I'm going to say, as I think right now, with the information that I have now, I would say that they could be traveling in the group and not necessarily be aware of each other, or at least not all of each other. Why? The best way I can explain what I'm thinking on that is, what condition are you in? Not just what condition did you die in, what condition are you in now? How has that developed? Has it gotten worse? Have you gotten weaker? Did you get stuck in a loop? Where you're not residual, but you are kind of sort of thinking the same things over and over again, which is why I think it's very hard for ghosts to come in here and just like spurt out a piece of information. And, why do you just keep repeating the same thing? Finish the sentence, but they get stuck in it's murder. It's murder. Okay. Who, murder. Yeah, we got that. What's who, murder. How many times have you heard this? They're stuck in a thing. So take that into consideration and wonder. This is kind of mind blowing because it blew mine when I thought of it today. As mindless and as simple and as natural as a fish swimming in a school, or a bird flying in a flock. We could just be, in some cases, if you pass and you don't cross over, eventually sometimes you might just let go, and the soul does what comes naturally and collects with other like energies in that frequency. And you could travel for a while, I am sure, with others and not even be aware of all of them being there, because you're just seeing what your vantage point is, what your next step or next thing would be. It's an amazing subject because we don't have the answers, but we have enough things to go, oh my gosh, there's so many things that are possible. Where are they all connected? There's so many different directions this can go in. How are they all connected? And how could we prevent the bad stuff? How could we prevent somebody from being stuck on a battlefield, repeating, getting shot over and over again in the same way, or whatever traumatic thing may have happened? And why isn't it as easy for them to pick up their head and just go, oh, they don't get that chance? Is there something holding them back? Yes, in a lot of cases. Yes, yes, yes. In a lot of cases, yes. And then you've got the ones that went out, I have no idea. And I believe that there's a collection, kind of. Do you guys feel that? Where we're getting more and more and more, not just because of the information, but I think the veil is thinning and more things are popping up and more lights are coming on and more connections are being made. More spirit guides are with each other. I kid Steve Stockton all the time. I said, our spirit guides have lunch about 2-3 times a week. And then they come and they jabber on and they tell tales, whatever. And because we're always, there's always smacking into the coincidences and the synchronicities. And it's even beyond, it's well beyond that. But it's like, use our hands, tell us what to put out there. Tell us that, what can we say to save that one kid that's sitting at home, God knows going through what, even if it's just a rotten place to be. Dad drinks a little bit too much beer and ignores me, doesn't beat me and abuse me, just ignores me. That's abuse. Sure has an effect. Maybe Dad's doing the best he can do and he's been abused and he's mentally, again, it goes on and on and on and on. But if that teenager happens to turn this on and looks and sees and something of interest or something that sparks an idea or something like, wow, for whatever, somebody in the chat inspires them. It's a vehicle. And so is his stuff and the missing, very important stuff from, the missing and disappearing and trying to unravel and sort that, to, just keeping the fun nostalgia stuff alive and the stories told, and helping people with his voice. Some people help with their hands, some with their skills, some with their art, some with their knowledge, some with their voice. It's crazy, right? Beautiful world. Can be. All right, here's the second one. This one is about the Halifax disaster and some of the repercussions that keep echoing to this day. Really, it's terrible sad. So cute.
In Halifax, for example, there are markers all over the city to commemorate one of the world's great disasters, the Halifax explosion. One of them is a grave site for some of the 2,000 killed, and Susan Gorel lives right next door.
I've been living in Halifax now for 35 years. I live in a tiny little house. It's very comfortable, it's small, it's cozy, and it's not very far from a graveyard where the unidentified are buried from the Halifax explosion. It was 1917 when it happened. Two ships collided. There was a lot of people that got killed. It was horrific, from what I've read. I got a little upset because they decided to put up an apartment building right beside the graveyard, and they started digging beside the cemetery. That's when all the weirdness started to happen. The scariness. There is a lot of people buried in there. And I think myself, a lot of people are not resting in there. They're not being respected. And I think they're angry. That land should never have been touched. I've never experienced anything like this before in my life. It was in the evening. This was about 11 o'clock at night. I just didn't have a good feeling that night. I didn't, it felt like really different that evening. Then I heard, and Tom heard, footsteps going straight upstairs and going into the right-hand bedroom. I could tell for sure it's a male. The footsteps are very distinctive, and it sounded like somebody, like they were pacing. I said, "Do you hear that?" He goes, "Yeah." I said, "Oh, I said, "There's something up there." I said, "You got to get up there and have a look." Then I heard footsteps going straight upstairs and going into the right-hand bedroom. I said, "There's something up there." I said, "You got to get up there and have a look." He actually got out of bed, went up there. He said, "My heart was racing, and it wouldn't stop racing." And he said, "I know somebody was watching me." I said, "Wow." Every night, every single night, you can hear it. You'll hear something every night. If they dug more, the sounds got louder, there would be more activity. I don't mind guests, human guests, per se, but it does, get a little scary at times. If Tom would be out, I'd stay upstairs. I'd keep all the lights on. And it doesn't matter if the lights are on or not, because you can feel it if there's somebody watching you. You could just feel that, there's somebody else in that room with you. So I'd call him up. I'd actually disturb the poor man and say, "When are you coming home?" And I'd tell him, all night I felt the same thing. And it's very uncomfortable. I was laying in bed, I was getting drowsy. Tom's out watching his shows. I think I'm gonna, bed down for the night. and I'm gonna call it quits. So I turned the light off. I heard footsteps coming up the steps and coming straight into the room, and right in my ear, I heard, Susan. I said, that's not Tommy. I kept listening, and then she said it again, Susan. And then disappeared, very quick. Nobody was in the room, no one.
Now that's not residual. Keep in mind, that's intelligent. Watch what happens next.
I said, wow. I just put my head down and I pulled the blankets up. I brought them up and I said, Tommy, I said, you know, it's got to be something going on here. He goes, well, I don't know what to tell you. I said, well, I'm going to tell you something. I said, I'm going to get on the phone and I'm going to get a priest in here and I'm going to get this house blessed. So I called up Brother James and he came out with Sister Rita and he blessed every single room in my house. And he said a prayer and we all said a prayer. About a week later, it started right back up again. But this time, it got louder. Going down into the basement, that's one place I hate going. You could just feel that, you know, there's somebody else in that room with you. And it's very uncomfortable. Going down into the basement, that's one place I hate going. You could just feel that, you know, there's somebody else in that room with you. And it's very uncomfortable. I went down, put a load of laundry in, and my washer and dryer are pretty, you know, close together. And then we have an exercise area where Tom works out. And I didn't feel alone. It was the creepiest feeling that came about me. And then the air, it just right downstairs got right chilly. And it was just a chill that went behind me. For some unknown reason, I turned towards the ball. And lo and behold, there it was. It was the man. I tell you, look, I didn't know what. This will really throw it into you. I tell
No
you, look,
idea.
I didn't know what to do. I just stood and just looked. I stared. It's a feeling that comes over you that is almost, you can't describe it. It's like, what do you do? Where do you, you know, which way do you run? So believe you me, you wanted to see somebody run up the steps quick. I must have done 2 at a time. When I made it up, they were really stirring up, you know, a problem over there with, you know, all this drilling. That's it's got to be causing this. I'd like my house to return to the way it was. I don't like going around corners and seeing surprises. It does, you know, it gets you very nervous, you know, what's around the next corner. And I don't like it. I want my house back. That's what I want.
Susan hoped the priest's cleansing would return her house to normal. Our experts can't be sure why it failed, but it's possible the priest was addressing what he thought were demonic spirits. Ghosts that aren't evil might not leave simply because the requests were not directed at them. Like Dan's ghosts, Susan's may just be curious and confused. Susan is not alone in her belief that disturbing graves stirs up trouble. There are many reports of paranormal activity when new houses are built near First Nations burial grounds. Ancient Chinese tradition dictates that cemeteries are left unmanicured for fear of disturbing the dead. In fact, the tomb of the ancient philosopher Confucius is a mound in a cemetery overgrown with trees, bushes, and grass. The traditional Chinese know what Dan and Susan merely suspect, that if you disturb the dead just might end up disturbing you.
There's influence that shape us, basically, and I really think this ghost experience was a thing of wonder. I think if a grave was disturbed, my personal belief is if something like that happened, it may be cause for a paranormal event to occur, and I think there's a strong correlation given the history of this area and the destituteness of the destitute people that landed there, resulting in an activity that I witnessed as a child in this house.
I'll tell you, it's changed my life in more than one way. I definitely believe now that there is life after death. Nothing has harmed me. I'm very lucky to say that. So I'd like them to just, leave and be at peace, and so we can both be happy.
It's so crazy when that pops up. I have no idea what's going on with this editing mess, but welcome to the Hot Mess Express, guys. When you're rushing to throw things up, things happen sometimes. We'll work around it. So, in her case, again, huge tragedy, of course. And I think that them traveling together is very interesting. Again, a lot of stories about this happening with Titanic. The ghosts that stick together, not only around the artifacts or the museums or the place that has and talks about it, but also around items. Of course, we've heard about the coal, right? And Titanic, the engine crew from the Titanic showing up where people have purchased this coal and had it on display on a shelf or whatever. In fact, there was a story where she put it on, didn't want to get the coal on, even though it was wrapped up, people get paranoid, on a lace tablecloth on her dresser. So she stuck it on the windowsill till she could give it to her daughter the next day. And she saw an engine worker, like somebody would be shoveling coal on the Titanic, standing outside her window, banging on the window in that period clothes. So I can't, it's not possible. Just there's one more thing you don't have to worry about. It's never going to happen. Oh my God. It's just, no, please don't. No, look, I do the best I can. Sometimes I just have to mash buttons till something works. And, I've cut off shows. I've wound up on other people's shows. I've sent the show out probably. Who knows what's happened? As long as we get it out there, get the word out there, So it's a mess. But anyway, that stuff that's in the middle was supposed to be the thing, but I know exactly what I did. One was longer than the other, and it wound up in a different. It's totally my fault. It's like a typo in editing. But if it happens in the next one, we'll try to get through it. But I hope it doesn't, because this is my favorite one. This little guy breaks my heart when he talks about it. It's emotional, it's real, it's impactful, it's profound. And I think it it very well explains the people that are in this, that are the quiet doers. And what I mean is, there's a lot of people professional on TV for whatever reason. Some are actors, some wish they had, the things that they say they had, and then some really do. Some are some of the best, true, sweetest people, humble abilities, you know, like you wouldn't believe. And out there doing good, and you never know. You never hear about it. It's like all underground, and every once in a while you hear a little something, something. There's plenty of people like that in every walk of life, you know. So, and I think that's what's sad too, because I think we hear more of the bad stuff always, if it bleeds, it leads, than we hear about the good. And there's so many. There's, quiet friendships. There's, um, support, just, people being happy that you're doing what you're doing, and they're doing what they're doing, and they're glad to see you're doing well, and you're glad. Just a little warm connections, a little heart, connections there that are just like more like friends, or brothers, or whatever, even if it's on a small quiet scale. You're just really happy to see that person doing good. You're just as happy too over the years to see them get married as you are to see them when they get divorced or they have kids, or think it's working out great, but you're also sad with them in the sad times too. You know what I mean? But you support them through the whole thing. It's, I think that's one benefit in knowing some people all your life. I have very few people like that. And it's been very interesting to watch them grow as well, and how their character changed, and how they dealt with stuff, and, and how they so don't understand the stuff that you've done, and just could not wrap their minds. Please. Again, the people that are quiet in the background. I don't mean I'm quiet because I'm a big mouth. God, I've talked here for a minute. I hadn't even, I'm not even in second gear. So the thing is, the quiet people that keep the lights on, that, have had their light go out, have put their light out themselves, and struggled to keep it, burning again. And not only so much as to keep themselves alive, but had the strength and the will to reach out and take chances, and give of themselves, and put themselves between harm and somebody else, a complete stranger, and the extent in which they'll go to do that. It's like a couple of weeks ago, we had a potential problem where there might have been kids involved. Look at that clip that we watched. Just look at that clip. Believe it or don't, cut it in half, believe 50% of it could possibly happen, where a house could go batshit crazy, dangerous, Amityville level, whether it happened or not, just as, as it said happened, with the doors slamming and the thunderstorms and the telling you, man, evil can do some, refrigerators thrown at cops, things levitated, rain upside down, from the floor up. I could go on all night long. There isn't any barrier. There's no line. That's never happened. So it can't. Well, maybe it's happened and you don't know, you never heard of it. It's certainly not being advertised, right? And the things that are being advertised, people believe the lies. They'd rather believe what they want to be true, what they choose to be true, than what is actually true. And if you imagine that movie and you believe that half of that could happen, and somebody says that they have kids, you have to imagine it being a possibility that it's that bad and worse. Because to aim lower is very dangerous. Carpet bomb. until you get details. I know that sounds crazy, but if you're going to war, come on now. History's a teacher. History's a teacher. If you were going to war and somebody said that you had to line up and fight the way they fought in the American Civil War, after knowing it was a lousy, if you know anything about it, it was just the way they all just lined up, just walked into open fire, and then fell and got up and just continued doing it until they got as far as they could. And if they got up close, it was bayonets, hand-to-hand combat. You know, they didn't learn anything from the Native Americans, you know, and the guerrilla warfare. I'm going to tell you something. They didn't take us out with as many bullets as you think, even though there was many bullets and it was dirty fighting and it was nasty. It was the disease. If it wasn't for them nasty ass germs taken out, you know, Aunt Edna, I want to say 80%. I mean, I've heard higher numbers. I'm trying to bring it down so it sounds realistic, but I think it's worse than that. Y'all have seen the videos where I've done where for all the Native Americans and the Americans were, and then over time it just and it's a tiny little red dot. It's crazy how fast that happened. You know. But this house is new. Nothing's ever happened here, and I don't understand why it's haunted. Who is this soldier that stands at my bed and tries to talk to me? He's trying to kill me with his bayonet. He keeps showing me his bayonet. I would say higher in it. Now, I'm trying to be conservative, and what I mean by that is, you know, I'm trying not to exaggerate because I think it's high. I do think it's higher. I mean, I've heard many a higher. Again, you got to take yourself with a grain of salt, man. You know, I mean, where are you getting your information? You know, you got to look at the results. Tell you, you know, the results. The facts don't give a damn about your feelings. You know what I mean? Keep in mind, I can remember being in the 3rd and 4th grade reading a history book. And I can remember the desk. I can remember sitting at the desk. I can remember looking up at the teacher sitting at her desk. And I can remember looking back at that paragraph, and I continued to read it. It was some derogatory statement and an outright lie about the Native Americans that were in the area that they were talking about. And I knew better because I had been taught different. And I had been told to look for the lies, and I found them. And there they were in print. And I was also told in print, you couldn't put something in print unless it was the truth. I can't tell you how many times I heard that from my parents who worked. I would say I can remember 3 different newspapers they worked for in and out in various different ways, but mostly advertisement, and told about the journalistic integrity. And, you know, you can't put it in print if it's not true, and you have to prove it's true and stand by and don't reveal your sources. And, you know, being, you know, a good investigative reporter, and make sure if you say it's true, you know it is, and you get multiple sources, double check. They can't put it on a label if it's not true. It's against the law. All of those words are true. All of those are made up chemical things that they change in court every couple of years after the license runs out on the words, and they just keep changing the names of the poisons and moving them around like some kind of fancy shell game on the back of a label. And you're at the store and you're reading it and you're thinking, okay, I'm doing good because I'm reading it. You know, why are they jamming a toxic thing that was, I know I'm getting off here, but it causes death, so it does go. If you really kind of want to jam a square peg in a round hole, you can make this fit. But why would they take something that was in a factory? All this is documented, but I promise you it's not verbatim. I'm paraphrasing. in a factory trying to create a pesticide, okay, to spray on plants. And one of the scientists that was working in the lab happened to be a smoker, so he goes outside to smoke, and he's standing around talking to somebody you'd recognize. He's worked in many different capacities in our government. I won't say his name, but anyhow, I'll move on. They're out there smoking a cigarette, and he goes, "Wait a minute, something sweet? I haven't had any sweet. I don't need any candy bar." And they're kind of, BS and stand around the talking and smoking and joking. And throughout this conversation, the dude, who kind of sounds like Donald Rumsfeld, is standing there, and he catches his attention. He said, "What do you mean it's sweet? I thought you were working on such a." Yeah, that's all I've touched. He goes, "What are you touching that for? It's poison." He goes, "A little bit ain't gonna hurt you." He goes, "How much of a little bit?" He's making an ant and roach bug killer, but it tastes sweet on his fingers because his fingers got on the cigarette butt, and he tasted it while he was smoking. True story. I bet you Blue can back me up. Hey, Blue. Yep. Rumsfeld got in on that one early. It's a little thing called aspartame. When it goes into your body, the chemical, that the way they were going for it, it's supposed to be, it reaches a certain temperature, it creates the poison that kills the bugs that they were going after. And it changes at a certain temperature. That temperature happens to be 86 degrees. Once it changes, it hits that temperature, it changes into a highly toxic poison that it does dissipate over time, but it takes a long time. It's very slow, and it does leave deposits in your fatty tissues and in your muscles. And, that can go up and down with how that releases as well. If you're infirmed, if you're sick, if you're exercising, it can be dispelled, and then it hits you all at once again. But if you continue to put it in your body, you are creating this buildup, hence the words aspartame poisoning. Because what is your body temperature? You think it's going to hit that 86 degrees within your body? Think, people. And they change the name continuously. And they license the names that they're allowed to use. And they move it around on the labels. And then they buy out these small organic companies. And they keep the label because you trust them. But then you look and you see who really owns them. And you'll see that Annie's bunnies ain't Annie's bunnies anymore. And Bert, he lost his bees a long time ago. Tom, I have a thing that Tom is the same Tom that was on the MySpace Tom. I think that's where Tom took his money and probably started MySpace, and then went off, and he was app ported somewhere after that. Who knows? But all these little companies are being bought up by the big companies, and they're changing the chemicals. So, shop wisely. Money is dear. You're dear. Life is fragile. Don't wind up a ghost floating around in a flock of orbs. Energy, however lovely that may sound, to float around and fly. Who knows what's going on there? It could be like being stuck on an elevator. Are they strangers? I'm sorry, but I can't handpick 10, 15 strangers off the top of my head, at least locally, that I'd want to be stuck on an elevator for the better part of some afterlife. I don't know. Is it like riding an escalator with a bunch of people in an airport, or one of those people movers? Hold on. That's kind of sort of what it's like. You ever been on one of those people movers in an airport where everybody gets on? Hey, Steve, you should have come on and talked about this. We would have had a grand old time. But, I don't know. Is that what it's like? Think about it. Sammy Jane, I'm telling you what, man, Burt's Bees, what a shame. Shame on him. Shame on him. He had some, I read all about it. I got sucked in, read all about it. He had some neighbor was getting, she was getting his honey from, he has his own honey, but apparently she had something else. Anyway, they got together and, Burt's Bees. So, and she got in somehow, was showing him how to market. Who gives a shit? It was a good product. It was cool to support somebody. It was one of these, I think, Portland, Oregon, Birkenstock guys, all right. I'd rather buy it from, old Granny Witch up in the Appalachian Mountains somewhere, but she didn't have a website and I couldn't get a hold of her product, But if I knew those people, that's where I would prefer. Your neighbor, your local farmers market. Watch those bastards too. I'm telling you right now, there's a scam going around where these son of a guns are going in and they're buying this stuff wholesale and they're coming out and they're putting it in new crates or their crates and putting their little stickers on it and saying, oh, it's a family owned farm. Our family's been here. They can barely, push one for English kind of, you know what I'm saying? Nothing against anybody. I'm all for capitalism and, but I've never liked the guy during a freaking hurricane that stood on the corner and sold bottled water for $5 a pop. I'm the guy that if I got a case of water and you walk by and your little girl needs a bottle of water and you know what I mean? The water, I got water, you got water. I ain't got time for these, opportunity knocks, not in that way. But that's just me personal. So sorry to rant there, but you know the kind of people I mean. Some bitches. Ain't got time for this no more. This is a spiritual warfare, man. Light versus dark. Dark's had its time. I'm done. I'm going out in the light. I'm at least going to go out with my lights on. And I'm hoping I don't get on one of them people movers for orbs for because that's what a terrible way to haunt. Just following the stream, going through hallways and going in between buildings. I mean, this is what's happening, up and down staircases, in and out doorways. The hell's that all about? Break off, at least go to a bar or hang out, have a couple beers, slap some butts, start some bar fights, play some jukebox, play a little pool. Something. Go see the Grand Canyon. Go ride a barrel down Niagara Falls. You can do whatever you want. Now you're dead. You're just floating around in a wind stream or so. I don't know. I'm trying to figure it out, folks. I don't know. It's up. You got to figure it out for you too. I'm just observing and putting out ideas. It's been a lot of decades, but I'll tell you what. This is something that's new, but it snaps in with so much of the old stuff. Does that feel that way to you? To look at it in that way, that we're throwing away so much, again, I'm not that interested in evidence. Other people put a whole lot on it, and I think it's interesting, and I'll never tire of looking at it. That's not what I mean. But when I'm going in there, that's not my first priority. I'm very interested and I'm very workable with the team. I'm very, I'm all about everybody's interests. And it's just that it's not my strong suit. I'm still learning about a lot of the equipment, and some of the equipment I just don't understand at all. So if I'm getting something, it's not validating anything I'm already feeling or getting from other places because I don't understand it. And I got to use my time wisely. So I got to do what I'm good at, what I was sent to do, if that makes sense. But I will work in harmony as best I can with it because that's just the way it works. If it's working, it's no different than grabbing an ovation and jumping in on a jam session because you hear the guys and girls, whoever's playing up there, and you're feeling the groove. And you know that if you step up there, you're going to groove. You just, like riding a horse, and it just works. It's that magic moment. It's magic and it's beautiful, and it hums and you can feel it. It resonates in the whole room throughout. Everybody can feel it. Something special is happening. It's just a brief moment in time. But it's just like that in anything, I think. Whether you're working in a kitchen in a restaurant and everybody's just working together and it's everything is just perfect without, you know, any kind of yelling and screaming. In fact, people are singing or, you know, working together and stuff. I've been there, man. We did KP one time. We did so many. Oh my God, that was a rough KP. I'll never forget it. Literally garbage cans full of potatoes and a bunch of really tired recruits. I mean, just tired, just beat, broken, bent, you know, left for dead, rode hard and put up wet. And tired because we had just got off marches. We put in all day. And I mean, a day in the Army in basic training. I'm telling you what, I guarantee you didn't do much last week. I mean, it's just blah, 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 blah. And I mean, wow. It was the best of times. They were the worst of times. I don't want to go on a tangent. Let me play this last one. Let's get out of here. This is my favorite one because, like I said, when it all comes together and it just hums, and you're with a team or you're with a friend or you're with whatever. In this man's case, he was in the right place at the right time, but he had also, I think he had, I don't want to say reluctantly, but very naturally, I think almost just believing in his friend and just going along with his friend and her abilities. He was in the energy of the whole thing. And it's quite amazing. Listen to this story.
I'm born and raised in Kingston. I lived here all my life. I've traveled quite a bit all over the United States and all over Canada. I like other places and that, and I like to visit other places, but Kingston's basically my hometown. Maybe because not only did I grow up here, but I also have a lot of knowledge of the history of the city of Kingston. Well, I've always been interested in history, whether it's the American Civil War or Kingston history, and Kingston has a lot of history. The very early 1800s, when we had so many Irish ships coming over and Scottish and so on, people were coming over to build the Rideau Canal, but they were coming over, they were dying of typhoid and malaria, and all kinds of diseases like that. And Kingston didn't have a cemetery, except for where this Skelton Park was. So they used that as a cemetery. And they used it right up until about 1893. And in 1893, they decided to move that cemetery, and they were exhuming the graves. And the people in the neighborhood were complaining because of the stench, and money was short. So they just bulldozed down all the tombstones. It was not an easy task, and at one point was finally given up. And so they just covered it over with grass and sod or earth or whatever, and it became a park. So they just left them. They don't know where they are. They estimate today there's somewhere around 1,400, at least that many, or if not more, graves. Unless you study the history of Kingston, you would never know that that was Kingston's very first cemetery. Skelton Park isn't a place that I would go to in particular, but a friend of mine was visiting from out of town, named Margaret, who was into sending people into the light. But one of the things that they do is visit graveyards and walk into the graveyards, and if there's any spirits there that have not yet moved on into the light, they send them to the light. And whether I believe it or I don't believe it, I guess I certainly believe it now, because that particular night, it involved me. Skeleton Park isn't a place that I would go to in particular. But a friend of mine was visiting from out of town named Margaret, who was into sending people into the light. But one of the things that they do is visit graveyards and walk into the graveyards, and if there's any spirits there that have not yet moved on into the light, they send them to the light. This one particular night when Margaret was in town, she said, "Do you have any more haunted places you can take me to?" Because I had did this sort of thing before. In the daytime, I had stopped at certain little cemeteries and let Margaret walk through the cemetery, and then she'd come back and get in the car, and away we'd go. I had no experiences or feelings about it one way or the other. There is a place, I said, that not too many people know about. It's called Skeleton Park. It was nicknamed Skeleton Park because it used to be a graveyard. And I said, there are a lot of people still buried there. Well, can we go there? So here I was, 10 o'clock at night, drizzly, rainy, foggy, pulled up to the park. And I said, this is it. And I said, how long are you going to be? She said, oh, I don't know, whatever it takes. I said, okay, I'll be waiting. So out she got. I saw her going, and then all of a sudden she just disappeared. It's hard to keep track of time when these things happen. I want to say 5 minutes, but maybe it was 10 minutes. And all of a sudden, the wind started blowing, the car started shaking a little bit. And then, sometimes when you recall things, it's difficult. Then all of a sudden I seen these men, women, children reaching out, and I'm looking at them through the windshield. They're reaching, and I'm not scared of them because I don't feel evil from them. And they were in, like, not clothes that we would wear today. The clothes were tattered or ripped, or maybe they were very poor people. Remember, they come over on these immigrant ships. They might have had just the clothes they had on their back. And when they died, that's the clothes they were buried in. And they were worn and they were tattered, and that's probably why I was seeing that. Then, of course, I started hearing I call it wailing. You know, help us, help us. It was kind of an eerie sensation to be looking at these people, you know, reaching out for you. It's like, please help me. I think that's sort of the communication I got from these people, is that they were trying to say, we're here, we're here, we're here. Can you hear us? And that's the part I think that bothered me, because there was young children. I didn't believe for a minute that my life was in danger. I just looked at them and wished that there was some way I could help them. I just knew that Margaret had something to do with this. And I thought, gee, I wish you'd hurry up and come back here. They sort of started fading. And bang, they were all gone. The car door opened up and Margaret got in. I was crying, and Margaret says, what's wrong? I said, don't you ever bring me here again. Never. I said, I don't want any part of this. She said, what happened? I stepped on the accelerator and started getting away from the park as quick as possible. And I proceeded to tell her the story. And I said, did you master what you come to do? Oh, yes, she said, there were a lot of spirits there. She said, I sent a lot of them into the light. But she said, there's still a lot of them there that I need to come back. I said, not with me, you know. I think to myself, do people get stuck in between here and there? And if so, are that many people buried in Skeleton Park? Are they still waiting to go into the light? I've never been back to Skeleton Park since. I can go back in the daytime, but I don't think I'd ever go back on a dark, rainy night again, or any time at night for that matter.
John wonders if spirits can be stuck between this world and the next. Our expert says the attachment to this world may be to the dead person's physical remains, and this might be more intense if something violent or particularly tragic was connected with their death. John and Chuck were aware of the history surrounding their ghostly encounters, but for both of them, the ghost's appearance radically changed their connection to the past, a past that will live on through them.
Today, it would be a much different story. Today, when human remains are found, whether it's in a wall from a building they're tearing down or whatever it is, today, it means something. These were human beings at one time. These people have a right for us to know when they find these bodies in the woods. Who was this person? What happened to them? I realized, gee, there is another world out there. There are people that have not yet went into that light.
Well, there you go, folks. I mean, that was touching. That's one of my favorite ones, because God bless Margaret, and God bless him for just believing enough to take her there. You know, it's not everybody you can just say, pull over here and go to the cemetery. I'm going to get out, walk around, cross some people over. I'll be right back. But that's a friend right there, buddy. It's the kind of friend you need. You know, I mean, gosh, why wouldn't you if you could, right? So that's why we do it. I mean, a lot of us are in it for a lot of different reasons. Some of us were just put in it, or one day we just woke up in it, you know, and had no choice, and it was all around us anyway. So for whatever reason, I think the moral of this whole night has just been it opened my mind to some different theories. You know, if a river flows like that with so many currents, all different. I mean, it's just amazing. It's almost different layers, and it's not just the life within those layers and the different things that exist only in those layers, like different microorganisms and plant life and different species of fish and bottom crawlers and mud dwellers and all these the different layers. And here we are outside walking around in what I guess is the prime real estate of it all, to get, depending on who you're talking to. You're talking to a bird flying in the sky, or a dolphin in the ocean, or a school of clownfish or whatever. Who schools? There's a lot of different schooling fish, right? And it's always so cool how they all in some schools of fish, they're on that marker fish, that head fish will just turn, and the whole thing goes with them, and up and down. We've all seen the same things in birds. So isn't it odd that we exist in this part, and we're not really moved to do the same thing? Or is the same thing in our world and how we exist as humans that are breathing air and, don't really have the ability to fly, but we move around as we walk. We are self-propelled through this environment. Is our longing for friendship and socializing, because it seems to be through every culture throughout time, even if you're just associating and socializing with the other people in your village, even mountain men who lived probably, I'm spitballing here, maybe 8-9 months of their existence and most of their lives, pretty much loners, maybe a few animals, a few work animals, a pack mule, a few associates along the way they'd see once every year or something, or every couple months. Other than that, most people existed in small groups and socialized and helped each other. And now we kind of, again, this does have a connection to the dead and what they're doing, because we don't change if we don't cross over. And what happens there? I mean, again, we're guessing. But we do feel like we feel strong about some things. And I mean, that once you cross over there, you lose your earthly burdens. The people that come back are healed, even animals. You know, we're kind of way past that. It happens and it's consistent throughout time. This seems to be something that happens. So it's almost a given at this point for most of us. But these are souls that hadn't crossed. So they still got all that. Are we like that? Is that our schooling? Is that our grouping? Is that our energy trying to pull us to like-minded and draw us in the direction and the groups that we're supposed to be with? Is that why we struggle sometimes and we feel like we're not where we're supposed to be, because we're forcing our round peg into square holes for financial reasons or convenience or bad choices or no choices? And just thoughts. I'm wondering, because if we're doing it in death, we're doing it somehow in life, or we're repressing it in life. We're going against the nature of it. We're going against the nature of the natural species instinct of gathering with others for group survival, right? And similar beliefs and traditions. I mean, even if they were bent and they were, mixed in, because believe me, plenty of Native American stuff bled over, plenty of, different tribes in the, in the jungles of Africa or in Australia or wherever you want to name, any clan in Scotland, whatever. It's all picked up over time, The guy that was eating his hands, saw somebody eating with a fork once or whatever, or, it's just whatever you can name. It bleeds in. Culture comes into culture to become something else. Traditions add to this, change the way, and it changes. And it's in everything, from entertainment to life to how we eat, feed ourselves, and try to survive. It's crazy, but it's true. And if you think about that, if in death our energies and our frequencies and our longing to belong has us, however temporary, hanging out in these groups of lost souls, just like the ones that came down the stairs in Poltergeist. If you haven't seen that scene, go watch the movie. Poltergeist is it's a humdinger. It's got every layer, and I can tell you, there's very few things that happen in there that I would say, all right, that that one's Hollywood. You know what I mean? That one's a little over the. I've seen so much to go. I'm not sure what can't happen at this point. And anybody that knows anything about this subject can tell the same thing. I mean, from you name it. I mean, there's some things where I just go, oh, okay, that sounds made up. But it'll be something like, I never finished telling that story. And it goes with the Ouija board. And I started and I got off track and I thought about it later. But this is a good point, and it's also a good story. So 2 birds, 1 stone. No animals were harmed in that statement. So, guys, the story goes like this. It has to do with Ouija. So and again, sad. Game of telephone. Who knows if it's a word of it is true. So he's supposedly homeless. He's squatting in a abandoned old apartment, a motel kind of place. And he's getting away with it, and everything's kind of comfy cozy as it could be in his situation. It's, it's still ransacked. But he found that when he opened the windows, he could keep it kind of cool. And when he opened the windows, it actually kind of blew a ceiling fan. That no electric, but it would blow the fan. And it would all, extra cool. And it was kind of a neat situation. So the guy obviously had problems, and he had, what you could imagine, from mental to possible addiction. Who knows? And he's hanging out there for a while. And in this phase of the story, he's actually had himself a little wine, and he had heard some noises and saw some things, and began to think that this place that he was at was haunted by who knows what. And as he was drinking, he would start to talk to this entity, and one thing led to another. Over time, this is over time. He was able to squat there for quite a while, apparently. So it moved further, where he started to communicate with this entity that is in this abandoned apartment, whatever, building, via the movement of this fan, to the point that he actually put like yes and no and some other markings, almost like a makeshift Ouija board would be, but very much condensed, and would sit and lay on the floor and ask it questions and somehow communicate with it. And it wound up taking him over, and he would have this sometime often visitor, one of his friends that also homeless, didn't hang around much, but came around and visited often enough to understand this story, because he's the one telling the story about this, and how he was worried for his friend and could see his friend losing control and getting worse and worse, and kind of getting obsessed with this. And even more so, he was worried, almost controlled by it, and started doing weird things like boulder, say, robberies, turning on friends. He got a very quick, went from being, generally liked by the rest of the crowd in the streets to not trusted, and oh my gosh, here he comes. It was a quick, but still probably slow process. The man, how it ended, how I was told it ended, was the man went to visit him again, and he was hanging from the ceiling fan and had hung himself. Now, they had me up to that point. I was like, this sounds like BS, but, it's possible. There's nothing in here I can't say couldn't happen. Did this happen in this particular way? Who knows? Things have a way of twisting, and, again, I wasn't there. I don't know, but possible. I've seen bottles moving, pointing at letters in the middle of the floor, like it's a ghost is playing a game of spin the bottle all by itself, but is pointing at letters or yes or no and things like that. So who am I to say? But I don't think that ceiling fan would hold a human male body enough to hang it. Because here's the deal. I'll probably get in trouble, so I have to pick my words carefully, because I am not condoning this behavior at all. But I don't think a fixture like that is going to hold it for a drop. And a drop is the only way it's going to do anything. Because if it's not, then you've got the hang and kick. And that's even more pull on a fixture in the ceiling. What was that ceiling made out of? So that's where they lost me. And I'm thinking, okay, so do I X out the whole story? But it is a cautionary tale that anything can draw you in, anything can be used. It doesn't matter if it's a keyboard or if it's the board or whatever. Again, just another story that validates that point. And Also talks about loneliness and our need to socialize and reach out to anything like a ceiling fan and some letters on a ceiling that could carry a lonely person that far, to where he really did a lot of crime and a lot of, harm to his friends and people he knew, and then wound up taking his own life. Mm, Something weird there, but still. And we do not condone that. And if you know somebody, there are hotlines out there. Um, you know, absolutely. You know, life is fragile, and we needed to be treated that way. But apparently, so is death in a lot of ways. And it's kind of comforting in a way to think that if it was a lost soul out there, that they would naturally, in some way, seek that connection to other lives, and travel, at least for a short time, in these little groups that just seem to be following the wind. And who knows? Maybe they know better than we do. Maybe at that point they're actually looking past all the differences and latching on to all the things that are exactly the same. So I hope you enjoyed tonight. A lot of it was just based on theory and ideas and what ifs. And I'm so tired I cannot read the chat completely, but I'll tell you what, I'm going to look at it later. And tomorrow night we'll be back with Steve. When Steve and I are talking about doing something fun, because here's the deal. The surprise that I have coming is going to be deep dive research. I've done a lot of deep dive research throughout my life, in and out, and more now than before, but it's been speckled through. And I'm very excited to bring this to you. It's going to be big. It's going to be amazing. There's no way it can't. Look, the best thing I can do is just not screw it up. You understand what I'm saying? I could just sit here and it would be amazing. You know what I mean? But I'm going to have fun with it. The other two are going to have fun with it. And I couldn't be happier to bring it to you. So I hope you enjoyed tonight. Sometimes I love coming on here, just you and me, and sharing this with you, and asking you guys, what do you think about that? Do you think that's amazing? And how are we fighting that natural pull to flock together and hang out and just chill and be cool? And I wonder if that's why we're drawn to things like concerts and crowds, but being in the crowd and still being, we still seem to be in our little individual pods. We're all out there moving around, but we're still, you know what I mean? We're not in smaller groups, of course. You come together, probably family or around a fire pit or whatever you might be doing, a poker table, whatever it may be you may be doing for that camaraderie and that brotherhood and that connection, that human connection, because it seems like in death, that's what, in some form or another, that's what we do. And that's kind of cool. Maybe we're helping each other out then, guiding each other to the light, because I think it's very cool when the living take time out of their day and their life to help a total stranger like that. I know quite a few people that do that, and I'm proud to know them. And I bet you some of them are here in this chat. You guys are special too and amazing. I can't do enough for you. I'm trying to get this done, and I'm so proud to bring you what we've got coming up here in the future. And this is why I don't plan, months ahead, because when things like this come around, I want to be able to give it the time it needs and do the research and stuff. So we'll have a couple of shows like this that are just fun, and I don't have to do a lot of deep dive. It's just theory and tossing around ideas, and you guys are along for the ride, right? So Yeah, birds of a feather flocking together, Jack. Absolutely. I think that's what it seems to be. And why not? But again, the portal theory is absolutely fact. But and it could be groups hanging out and doing that and coming through. So again, it just has other layers of thought and other ideas, because the more we throw it out there and more we think, and then you guys take it and you go out in your directions and pick up your individual different data you're collecting in your life, in your day, and then put it all together and come back again and go, wow, you know what? I saw two stories on this that kind of snapped over here and snapped over here. And, it's a different way of looking at stuff. And it's just crazy amazing. But man, it seems that's the way the earth and energy moves. It's written in everything. It's written in the layers of the trees and the layers of the rocks, the layers of the soil and the ground, and the in your palm, in the swirls of your fingers, in the stars. It's all connected. We're all connected. They fooled us into having something to fight about with each other to keep us busy, so we wouldn't see what they were doing. But we see them now, don't we? We see them now. And I see you. And I love you all. Thank you for being here. And because I love you so, if you so desire, you can dive headfirst into this wonderful video of none other than the skeleton death fairy, because I love you so much. On the way out, and I will sit here and I will put your comments up. I love you all. See you tomorrow night with Mr. Steve Stockton. And I'm not going to tell you what we're doing, because we're still sorting it. But you know us. We could talk about a bag of crackers for about an hour and a half, and then we'll need some pictures. So I love you very much. Thanks for being here. I hope you enjoy it. Who doesn't love Skeleton Death Fairy with Kieslowski as artist? Enjoy. I love you. See you tomorrow. Bye.